call to order this regular meeting of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District Citizens Advisory Committee. This is the third Thursday of July. It's the 21st, and we are at 5:17 p.m. Will the secretary please call roll?
Thank you. Yes. Joe Wainea,
Here.
Lily Kleinlein here, Rondi Cox, John Arnold, Ryan Conway,
Hello, I'm here.
Ryan Edwards, here, Paul White,
Yes.
Bradley Lucas,
Here.
Nelson Schaefer, Mason Greenberg, Andrew Manley, and Morning Wilder. I'm sorry, those were not in alphabetical order.
Right. I will quick note, Morning Wilder has submitted her letter of resignation.
Thank you.
Yes. And also, so we do have a quorum, but I believe there was one more expected to attend in person. There's Nelson Schaefer. So we should have Mason Greenberg attending
Nelson's here.
virtually, right?
Yeah, I believe that Mason and Rondi were perhaps going to be virtual, so keep an eye on that.
Okay, very good. Do you want to do a quick call for Nelson as well?
Nelson Schaefer, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
He must be here because he ain't all there.
May I borrow a piece of paper?
All right, so we do have a quorum. And we can go on to the adoption of the agenda. So it was distributed by email and uploaded to Dropbox on Tuesday, the 19th. Are there any objections to adopting it as distributed and shown in screen share? All right, seeing none, the agenda is adopted. And we can go on to our first order of business, which is the approval of meeting minutes for the June 16th meeting, which was included in the packet and also uploaded to Dropbox. Are there any corrections to those minutes? All right, seeing none, those are approved. We can swiftly proceed to reports, starting with the district, if you would, Tom.
Sure. I think everybody is aware, but we did start taking tires down at the South Walnut facility on July the 1st. Have not gotten as many as we thought we would be getting, but they are coming in. People do seem to be pleased with that service. Additionally, I forget the exact date, but toward the end of June, we also started accepting debit and credit cards in the household hazardous waste facility for payment of the various fees that apply to some of the materials that are brought in. So again, something people seem to be pleased with. And the staff's doing really well with the card reader. We haven't had any issues with that. So that's all going well. And for those that aren't aware, I did announce at the board meeting last week. Unfortunately, Scott Morgan is taking early retirement from the district, and have since confirmed we're allowing him to push that out to August the 15th, which will be his 28th anniversary of employment. So that will be his last day with the district, so we'll look at our policy is to advertise open positions in-house, and we'll look at staff interest and see, of course, that dominoes tend to fall when those things happen when we hire from within. So we'll see how the staff shakes out based on the interest from that opening. So. And then otherwise, we are still trying to finalize our budget. If you didn't hear at the board meeting, we get two different excise taxes, a vehicle excise tax and a commercial vehicle excise tax. We were provided predicted levy amounts for those two tax lines by DLGF earlier in July. And then when we met with the DLGF representative, The morning of the 14th, they provided a significantly different, lower estimate for those tax lines. And of course, the budget I had prepared to show the board that night was based on that original prediction. So still trying to confirm some numbers with DLGF, but obviously that will result in some changes to the budget that will ultimately be presented to the board in August that we'll ask them to vote on. I think that's all that I have.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions on that report? I would like to ask, I saw that the website was updated with to reflect the changes to accepting waste tires. Have you considered a banner at the top of the page saying something to the effect of now accepting waste tires on the homepage, so that it would be, because I saw the changes were anywhere within the website that pertains to the accepted materials, but there was nothing indicating that it had changed. So I thought, knowing that there was less drop off than
Yeah,
anticipated.
Starting to accept waste tires required changes in a number of places at the website where it indicated that tires weren't taken, and then making those changes, and then also adding in a couple of sections that we thought was relevant, that we were taking the tires. To be honest with you, no, we never did discuss doing any sort of a banner or anything at the top of the homepage. But I think, we've made numerous announcements on our Facebook page about it. It's been, we've discussed it at board meetings, at least May, June, and July, at those public board meetings. And we did some radio advertising, public service announcements. So I think we've made a pretty concerted effort to get the word out.
Great, thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, we can proceed to reports from the chair. I actually don't have one. So we can move on to our next item of business, which is reports of special committees. I know that no committees convened in the interim time, but I still wanted to at least provide an opportunity if there was any individual members who had anything to report with respect to any of or either of the subcommittee activities. And I did want to ask Tom that maybe now, or maybe during the report would have been more appropriate, but the rebranding subcommittee, I was curious if there were any developments or status updates.
I'm not aware of anything that's developed since, we met and reported last. I know we had a couple of members of that subcommittee have had some vacation time since that last meeting, and that's, made it hard to get that committee back together. But along those lines, I would note that there are things in next year's proposed budget that assume rebranding will happen and conclude this year. So it is something that we do need to start meeting on again and get things moving forward on.
Is the content that was discussed during the meeting, has it been provided to, or has a consultant been considered or reviewed following the last meeting? As I recall, the last step was to determine a few options.
I have talked with some marketing, branding consultants, and I have information to bring back to the subcommittee when it meets next.
Perfect, thank you. All right, seeing no other takers for subcommittee input, we can go on through special orders and unfinished business. There are neither of either. So we are on to new business. The one item we have is the sustainable food service packaging concept that was brought up at last month's meeting. I wanted to offer you, Ryan, the opportunity to start on that if you had anything in particular you wanted to discuss at this meeting.
I've really just been doing research since our last meeting, just kind of looking at the landscape of policy and community approaches to reducing single-use takeout and delivery materials. And And I've certainly seen restrictions that we have locally in terms of what you shared with me, Joe, on the reusable container restrictions. So, and so I shared a little bit of my research with Brian and with Joe. And Joe, what you offered back in terms of we'd have to really make a grassroots relationship building sort of approach. That's what speaks to me as well. I don't really see any policy proposals to do the most feasible and there's a ton of policies at the local and state level out west, which isn't necessarily going to match the culture here. Looking further out, like in Carolinas, Durham has kind of a nonprofit lab that is working to build a more reusable culture. And it seems to be have some viability, seems to be doing well there and gaining recognition. So again, I don't have any real proposals, although opt-in, an opt-in option for doing takeout delivery leftovers does seem to be something a lot of places are trying. That's the only way I can, what I can really see from the short term. But I love, trying to make ideas better. So if there's anything you guys have in this arena, please shoot me down. And I'll continue trying to figure out. And I think Brian, you might actually have some of the best sort of, especially if you and your wife would sustainable living, perhaps, seeing if that might be the right platform to launch something like this. I'm specifically envisioning like a central station for sanitizing, distribution, collection, and working with those business partners. So advertise the service. And those. That's what the plan is.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll add the one bit that Ryan mentioned at the beginning about the limitations was the Indiana Code 36-1-3-8.6 regulation of reusable or disposable auxiliary containers prohibited. So that was a preemption that the state made on any sort of regulation of basically any containers of any kind. So pursuit of a city ordinance to regulate the use of single-use anything is essentially already preempted by the state. So that's not a currently viable option to pursue directly in the endeavor to limit single-use item use.
I'm assuming that you're referring to like cups, like
It's-
restaurants or
Yeah.
styrofoam takeout stuff.
Those are the things that we're interested in trying to reduce use of, and the way that preemptive code is written, it is intended to cover everything, like cups, plates, bowls, styrofoam, like whatever the material is, plastic bags, all of it. So it's intended to prohibit the prohibition of any of those things. So that would cover any of the restaurant single-use materials, forks, spoons, knives, cutlery.
So the regulation that you're citing is saying you can't use these more than once, or
It's saying that local municipalities have no authority to define any regulation of them in code.
okay.
So the city, for instance, or the county cannot
So
control that.
if I want to use the same container twice, I can use it twice, or
It's more so that we can't regulate the use of
you can't
containers.
regulate whether I use it only once or twice or 4 times or until.
Well, this is more related to,
Pardon?
this is more related to businesses and.
Well, I'm
the-
saying
yeah,
me,
the
but
plastic bags that
saying
the
me
grocery
as a
stores
business.
and other places use, and then also the carry out to-go containers that, bars or restaurants would use for food and drink. That's what it has nothing to do with, if you want to bring your.
No, yeah, no.
Brian's got his bottle,
Yeah,
he can
no,
go fill that up
I
at the water
got
fountain.
that.
And it wouldn't prevent that business from making that decision on their own. It's just that a local government entity can't place any restrictions on the use
Okay.
of single use.
So if a local business wanted to revert back to Coca-Cola per se, 1939, and wash all their bottles and cups and things out, sanitized so it could be reused, they made the decision that
Correct.
they could.
Correct.
Within whatever constraints the health department has.
Right.
Right.
Obviously.
But the city cannot, or the city or the county cannot obligate anyone to stop using single item.
The city
Materials.
can't say you will clean and sanitize and reuse it, or you won't.
Or you can't force a restaurant to serve its to-go beverages in a reusable plastic cup versus a
Right.
styrofoam cup.
But what I do think is potentially interesting is maybe, Tom, your thoughts on where this could potentially fit within the GBN activities, which I know are more so focused on recycling services and education, and less so on like sourcing changes. Would that, or alternatively, be something that could be related to the role of potential new staff, potential new like outreach staff position that's been discussed?
Well, yeah, certainly it could be. I mean, we could certainly, provide, outreach and education or, to the benefits of, of using reusable containers when you sell somebody something. But that's all, that would be the extent of what we could do.
I see.
We wouldn't have any way to, enforce. I guess about the only way that we could enforce it would be if it was something that was a part of the Green Business Network and we refuse to accept certain materials or items, but then that's kind of contrary to what we're trying to do, because if they're going to continue to use them and we're not taking them for recycling, they're going to get thrown away. And so.
That makes sense.
I think the only thing that we could, I guess enforcement is not the right term. The only action that we could take through the Green Business Network to try to enforce or encourage, businesses to switch over to reusable would be to stop accepting those recyclable materials through that program. But then that's contrary to what the program's trying to achieve.
Are there any other thoughts from members on the single-use reduction, or I guess the more sustainable containers, potential approaches or involvement from the CAC?
So many thoughts. No, so I guess like the idea, I mean, like any of these things, it's all comes down to what we both desire to commit to them and what we are able to commit to them. And what I mean by that is like, so these businesses are already slammed to the wall and exhausted and have barely survived, the last few years, and they want to do good things, but they also want to have food on their tables in many ways, for them and their people. And so, just like any other time that we've, endeavored to make positive policy changes in the county, at the city, et cetera, a lot of it will come down to grassroots democratic participation, which sometimes looks like exactly what we're doing right now. We're having this discussion. We have an informal proposal on the table, but I think that, us talking out together, like what the possible ways of moving forward are, like that's what we have still in democracy. And so what I think about is like, instead of, if it's clear that making a law to force people to do something isn't going to work out, then that means that changing culture or changing people's psychology or behavior is like the next step, right? And so to do that, I mean, we're the ones that have to essentially think this from start to end, all the way out for what it feels like and looks like for one restaurant, and then see what that feels like and looks like for multiple restaurants in terms of like, okay, what's the restaurant's experience? And then what's the operator or service provider's experience of working with like all 95 of the restaurants that we have in the county? And that would look different. And so I immediately have questions about, yeah, is there any overlap in infrastructure that the county has in terms of being able to wash and sterilize these things for use? Because it's the infrastructure costs that would be heavy up front in terms of having a centralized service that we provide. And I think that that would be best subsidized by local government. Because there is no business case for it, because no one would make money doing this. It won't save businesses money necessarily, except maybe on washing costs or some procurement if they go through this system anyway. I'm getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's on purpose to stimulate ideas around specifics, because if we don't specifically plan out details from the start to the end of this, it will remain another great idea in the annals of Bloomington great idea history. And I think the time for this is now, and it is ripe. And just like we're going around to all these restaurants, giving them compost service and pushing the GBN in their direction, several of them have adopted it because it is cost savings for them. And it does make sense, or they weren't recycling before and they're like, oh, geez, I didn't know we had this option. So I'd love to triple dip and start gathering some information on what people are into for this. But it occurs to me that I don't know if you have the time to be that missing link or that glue between maybe three organizations, but this CAC, the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, looking at the chair right here, and then also the county's EQUAS, or maybe it's the Sustainability Commission of the county now too. I think those three bodies, if you shop it out to those three groups of people, you might be able to get the volume of support that you need to actually build out programming, which includes the outreach and the language and the mock-up and looking to pilot it, and people, where are you going to source the containers? What kind of specs do they need? What are the specs of like the washing apparatuses, infrastructure, et cetera? So I do think that we could, if we make this for people, and offer it to them and say, here, this is for you. It's a gift, and please help me make this better. I think that is the only way that we will get adoption quickly and with a lot of input, right? I mean, that's economic democracy there too. Like the market you're trying to improve and serve is giving you feedback directly into its needs as well. So we have a business economic development case here going as well. So maybe the chamber will be happy to be involved, or the BEDC, or some other like business group like that. So that's what I see for now to be like the main ways of doing this is like, if you want to make that impact, someone here or some small nucleus of us here have to be the ones that are like, okay, this is our thing for the next few years, and we need to design it from start to end. Here are the examples. They often say, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. We need to talk about like, okay, what's the price point, per takeout container over 20 restaurants versus 30 and 40, so we can make that scale argument to say, well, if you sign up the restaurant that's next door to you, we can give you a 15% discount. How about that? And that kind of lures people in, so we would have to build it stepwise, I think, and probably go cohort by cohort, the way that we're doing the organics thing. But so far we're finding success in that model, and I think it's one that can meme out in a similar way. But I do think that it will take like a concerted like effort. So maybe even like a subcommittee. And I've done this before where I've been the person that sits on 3 or 4 different boards and goes to all those meetings, because you do need a coalition, and it's harder to ask for than to just demonstrate, like lead by example. So that's in the nutshell what I think that the battle plan could be to making this happen. And I think it can happen and should happen.
And making it an easy option. So, but I'm not afraid, I don't have any hesitation right now saying this is something I want to commit my time to. Again, I was really questioning what capacity is the best, because I know like trying to do it through policy really isn't efficient, but there are, like Brian mentioned, infrastructure, if we can provide infrastructure to make.
Is anybody aware of any community around the country that's doing that? Anywhere? Because I guess the question that's coming to my mind, and I would want to see how this works somewhere that has it implemented, is that once I send that container full of food home with the customer, how do I get it back into the rotation?
So there are deposit models. Basically, the customer is the one bearing the costs of making sure that either if it's not returned within a set amount of time. And this is the same in small businesses or nonprofits. They're adopting this model, like Chicago, New York. So larger cities have models like this happening in a more business context. Whereas North Carolina, it's through an NGO. Losing my train of thought quickly here, but basically, if customers do not return the container within a set amount of time, they end up purchasing it altogether, and then they have the option to dispose of it responsibly or use it. And the containers have a set lifetime, so they're not. And the aluminum ones, of course, are going to last much longer. The more durable poly-based materials are going to be shorter, of course.
I would just caution that starts to sound an awful lot like a bottle bill, which the Indiana legislature has been steadfastly against forever.
Sorry. Did you want that clarified?
I'm not hearing. It's not very
I said that what you're describing starts to sound a lot like a bottle bill, and the Indiana legislature has been steadfastly against that. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but just like the statute that Joe cited earlier, that's there because the city of Bloomington tried to put a bag ban in place. It is something that you could, because you're in essence adding a cost to the customer by that, but it's a deposit that they can get back. But just like with a bottle bill where you're putting that 5 or 10 cent charge, on a glass bottle, and for whatever reason, the legislature has fought that tooth and nail for years.
And I don't think that the cost, I'd have to look closer at how, like for Durham, they are, where that money's being managed, or how they're making it work with the public entities.
Well, again, and I'm just, if it's something that you're looking at doing via legislation or, ordinance enforcement,
I certainly wouldn't. That
just
wouldn't
like
be
with
an
the bag
avenue.
ban, you'll probably run into resistance at the state level.
Yeah, I think this is gonna kind of, like Brian was saying, gonna have to be more of a cooperative thing, but that's not done through any sort of code.
I will note, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think, having a couple of models that businesses, because every business is different, so some businesses might partner or even be willing, if shown a model that worked, to do the deposit of a aluminum container in and out. Other businesses really, they would love to get rid of styrofoam, but they haven't been able to either source it at an affordable cost for what they need, or can they charge a customer for a carryout box? And so, I think offering options where it's like some group, this coalition has found these sources of what we've vetted to be actually sustainable or well-made, cardboard carryout, for example, because I think a lot of local businesses especially would be open to that, but they don't necessarily have the time or finances to find it. Or maybe they think, great, I found a great one, and it's actually terrible and not sustainable at all. It just kind of looks green. And so if you're saying, no, this is a great company and they have reasonable. So I think there are different paths so that businesses who either they think their clientele wouldn't go for a reusable, or they just can't manage it in a tiny kitchen. They don't have to be like relegated to just the worst carryout container on the planet because they can't manage reusable glass.
I like that. I mean, that testing out a range of different ideas. I mean, that's the only way we find out what works here. And then what works here is going to be different than what works someplace else. And so yeah, being able to be committed to a slow process, and by slow, maybe 3 to 5 years. I mean, that's not slow on a human behavior and culture change timeline. That's pretty fast. And so then it came to mind like 3 groups that could be potential beta testers or just testers for these things. There used to be a Bloomington Independent Restaurant Association, but that's since split up, but there's these other groups now. So there's like a food truck group. And I think Jordan from the Chocolate Mousse kind of runs that. I forget his last name right now, it eludes me. So there's the food truck group. There's anybody using Jeff Meese's commissary, the One World Kitchen Share, because that's another place where multiple food service providers are like aggregated. So you have a pool of people there. You can just try it there. Then there's the Wow Food Group, which I think they have 15 restaurants now, maybe 12, 15. And that's Michael Ross's outfit. And they are operating, they have a commissary out of the old Wagon Wheel, which is on South Walnut. And so that would be another, it's aggregating multiple potential food service. So they might be willing to try it in a batch, roll out in a batch. And then a single source, but that's widespread in its network, is the Hoosier Hills Food Bank, because they have a food recovery program that if they standardized containers, that would be a way of testing out a few different, maybe standardized container options. So we can find ones that work and then get into schemes of like 2 Sticks Bakery. And I think Hopscotch, if you have a Hopscotch mug and come in with it, you get half off on your coffee, something like that. So this would be a similar type of thing that's non-legislated, but it's still enforced by the private entity itself, or like by agreement among a network of private entities. So I think those groups would be good places to start too. I think that they'd want to we get in on it. They'd be like, we don't have time. Can you help us? We'd love to do this, but how?
And one thing I was coming across in the accounts of people who are participating in these programs is businesses are seeing a lot of relief in terms of the space and ordering that are kind of built in with acquiring these materials. So it is something, I think, as people experience it, that's when they start to really see how that change can benefit them.
I did just want to mention to your earlier point, as some of the models that Ryan had shared that I looked at, they were all opt-in types where the users were subscribers to a service and then the restaurants participated with that.
If it's voluntary, that becomes much harder to
Right.
restrict via legislation.
Right. So that would be, I think, more along the lines of the grassroots direction where it would all be opt-in and like user individual based, which I think would probably be the best model to try to go forward with.
A lot of businesses seem to be doing already, or individual employees are doing a lot more, so I think it would be an easy thing for people or businesses to adopt.
Any other thoughts on the topic?
I wanted to echo that. Yeah, I think employees and staff themselves will be part of making the case to them, I think, was huge, because that for us, for like the restaurants and stuff, like when the staff like what's going on, like it is fun to do the work and they do it really well. Like our contamination levels just go pew, because they're loving it. And I think that they're looking for stuff, and this would be a hopeful story, in a time when our headlines aren't so fun anymore. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as a kid, I always loved going around finding pop bottles and take them to the store and getting a nickel for them or whatever it was. You bring in enough, hey, I get a bottle of pop. That was always a great incentive. And so for this to work, it just has to have some incentive for people to want to do it. So if I can take my favorite colored red, white, or clear pizza something cup in and they refill it for half price, well, that's an incentive. And I think more people would be prone to do something like that. And the food service cup pump industry people wouldn't have to lay out so much cash for more cups and plates and so on.
And one final thing I'll bring up that I didn't, from my research, and I mentioned it earlier, is there do seem to be multiple vehicles outside of the SWMD to pay for some of the infrastructure. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be something that we're doing here. There's a recycling market development program, solid waste management fund, and community recycling grant program. So those would definitely be vehicles. If I were, designing this, that's what I would look into.
Any other contributions? All right, thank you all. I think that concludes our one item of new business on the agenda. Are there any other business items that anyone else wishes to present at the moment? All right, seeing none, that brings us to public comment. So I see there are no members of the public present in the room or on Zoom. So we can have a moment for the good of the order, if there are any comments.
I did get notice earlier this week, the Association of Solid Waste Management Districts have officially scheduled their annual conference. So it will be October 4th and 5th. I will send you all a link to the agenda for the conference. And of course, the CAC has appropriations available for training and education. So if anyone wishes to attend that conference, you guys can work that out amongst yourselves.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Seeing no other remarks, that brings us to adjournment. If there is no opposition, this meeting will adjourn. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.